This is mud on our faces. We're not really black.
In 2020, Hulu executives suddenly pulled an episode of The Golden Girls. Fans were confused, but this wasn't the first time. You see, this specific episode had a dark history, facing censorship across the globe for one scene. It was a moment so controversial that it threatened the show's wholesome image. We're digging into the story of Mixed Blessings, the infamous mud mask incident, and why this beloved sitcom crossed a line that got it completely banned. What Hulu tried to hide. In the summer of 2020, something very strange happened. Viewers settling in to stream the beloved classic The Golden Girls on Hulu noticed an episode was missing. It wasn't just a glitch. The episode, titled Mixed Blessings from Season 3, had been deliberately removed by the platform. Fans were outraged and confused. How could a show as harmless as The Golden Girls get censored? But what many overlooked is that this wasn't the first time this episode had caused problems. This one scene had been a quiet controversy for decades, getting the episode blacklisted from syndication in several markets long before streaming existed. The core of the issue is a moment that lasts less than 30 seconds. The plot of the episode itself is already pushing boundaries for the 1980s. Dorothy's son, Michael, announces he's engaged to be married. The twist? His fiancée, Lorraine, is not only several years older than him, but she is also a black woman. While Dorothy struggles with the age gap, she doesn't care about the interracial aspect. The real conflict comes from Lorraine's mother, who is fiercely against her daughter marrying a white man. But the scene that got the episode pulled happens midway through. Rose and Blanche, in an attempt to rejuvenate their skin, try a new mud mask. As they are sitting at the iconic kitchen table, their faces covered in dark brown paste, Lorraine and her mother arrive for dinner. The two families meet for the first time. As the black women stare, Rose, in her classic naive way, smiles and says, "This is mud on our faces. We're not really." The implication is horrifying. It's a blackface joke, whether intentional or not. You see, in June 2020, in the midst of massive social justice movements, streamers were cleaning house. Platforms were scrambling to remove any content that could be seen as racially insensitive. Episodes of 30 Rock, Scrubs, and The Office were all pulled for featuring characters in blackface. The Golden Girls was swept up in the same cleanup. To platform executives, the context didn't matter. The visual of two white women with darkened faces making that remark to two black women was a public relations disaster waiting to happen. What many people don't realize, however, is that the mud mask joke is only half the reason this episode was controversial. The entire storyline about the interracial marriage was, to put it mildly, edgy for 1988. When the episode first aired, interracial marriage had only been legally protected in all 50 states for about 20 years, following the 1967 Supreme Court case, Loving versus Virginia. The topic was still a major taboo for many Americans. While Dorothy is progressive, Blanche and Sophia's initial reactions are filled with the kind of casual prejudice that was common, but shocking to hear on a sitcom. This 1-2 punch of a blackface joke and a storyline about racial tensions made the episode a target for censors for years. Hulu eventually restored the episode, but the incident revealed a dark spot on the show's otherwise shining legacy. But this one scene wasn't the only time the show courted controversy. Pushing the boundaries. The thing is, the Mixed Blessings controversy is so shocking precisely because The Golden Girls was one of the most progressive and forward-thinking shows of its time. You see, this show was never just about 4 older women eating cheesecake. It was a Trojan horse, smuggling incredibly serious and adult themes into living rooms every Saturday night under the disguise of a simple comedy. The writers, led by creator Susan Harris, were tackling subjects that most dramas were too scared to touch. First, let's look at the very premise. In the 1980s, television was obsessed with youth. Shows were built around teens, young professionals, or perfect families. Suddenly, here was a show starring 4 women, all over the age of 50. 3 of the main actresses were in their 60s when the show started. This was revolutionary. The show treated their lives, their desires, and their problems with respect. It didn't treat them as punchlines, but as fully formed people. And the show was a massive hit, proving that audiences were interested in stories about aging. What many overlooked was how the show handled adult themes. Blanche Devereaux's character was a complete game changer. She was an older woman who was unapologetically romantic and actively pursued men. She wasn't ashamed of her desires. In an era when older women were expected to be quiet grandmothers, Blanche was vibrant and full of life. The show normalized the idea that life, in all its forms, doesn't stop at 50. Then there were the very special episodes, but the Golden Girls handled them differently. They wove these issues right into the plot. In 1990, at the absolute peak of the public panic surrounding HIV and AIDS, the show aired 72 hours. In the episode, Rose learns a blood transfusion she had 6 years prior might have been contaminated with the virus. She spends 3 days waiting for her test results, terrified. The episode confronts the fear and misinformation head-on. Blanche even says, "AIDS is not a bad person's disease." This was incredibly brave, teaching a lesson of compassion to millions of viewers. The show also tackled LGBTQ+ issues decades before it was common. In Isn't It Romantic?, Dorothy's old friend Jean visits and develops a crush on Rose. While played for some laughs, the episode treats Jean's feelings as valid. Later, in Sister of the Bride, Blanche's brother Clayton comes to visit and announces he is marrying his partner Doug. Blanche struggles to accept it, but the episode ends with her standing up for her brother. This was 1991. The show was advocating for same intimate marriage over 20 years before it became law. The writers were taking huge risks, and it made the show a beloved icon, especially in the gay community. But the progressive image on screen hid a much darker reality behind the scenes. The feud that ended the show. While the 4 women on screen were the picture of perfect friendship, the reality on set was, to put it mildly, complicated. The thing nobody tells you is that 2 of the show's biggest stars were locked in a bitter feud that lasted for years. Many people are crazy about Betty White, but Bea Arthur was famously not one of them. Their clash of personalities created a tension that, according to some, is the real reason the show ended. Bea Arthur, who played the sharp-witted Dorothy, was a highly disciplined theater actress. She came from Broadway. She believed in focus, rehearsal, and staying in character. Betty White, who played the lovable Rose, came from the world of game shows and live television. She was famous for her bubbly personality and her ability to charm a crowd. This is where the trouble started. Between takes, Betty White would often chat with the live studio audience, telling jokes and keeping them entertained. Bea Arthur reportedly hated this. She felt it was unprofessional and shattered the fourth wall, pulling everyone out of the scene. But the tension went deeper than just professionalism. According to Rue McClanahan, who played Blanche and wrote a memoir about her time on the show, Bea had a very serious, reserved personality. Betty's relentless, sunny optimism simply grated on her. Rue, who was friends with both women before the show, said Bea just couldn't stand Betty's excessive happiness. What many overlooked was the green monster of jealousy. Betty White won the very first Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actress for the show in 1986. Bea Arthur, considered by many to be the show's true lead, didn't win until 1988. Insiders have said that this early win for Betty created a rift that never truly healed. It's a wow factor of Hollywood chemistry that the 2 women who disliked each other most had to perform together so often. You see, the writers loved pairing Dorothy and Rose, as Bea's deadpan reactions were the perfect foil to Betty's clueless stories about Saint Olaf. Their on-screen chemistry was amazing, but it was pure acting. Rue McClanahan said Bea wouldn't even go to lunch with Betty. If Betty and Rue were eating together, Bea would eat with Estelle Getty. This brings us to the show's secret weapon, Estelle Getty, who played Sophia. Here's a fact that still shocks people. Estelle was actually 1 year younger than Bea Arthur, her on-screen daughter. She spent over 2 hours in makeup and a wig for every single episode to look decades older. Despite her incredible talent, Estelle suffered from crippling stage fright. She would freeze before filming, terrified of the live audience. Bea Arthur, despite her feud with Betty, was reportedly incredibly kind and patient with Estelle, helping her through her lines and calming her down. By season 7, Bea Arthur had had enough. The feud with Betty, combined with feeling like the jokes were getting stale, led her to quit. The feuds and controversies finally boiled over, leading to the show's sudden end. What we're missing. When Bea Arthur left the Golden Girls in 1992, the show was over. The network knew the magic was gone. They tried to keep it going. The remaining three actresses, Betty White, Rue McClanahan, and Estelle Getty, starred in a spin-off called The Golden Palace. It saw the three women buy a hotel in Miami. It lasted just one season. It turns out the show needed all four of its ingredients. The absence of Dorothy's sarcastic center left the whole thing unbalanced. It was a failure that proved just how important the original chemistry was. So, let's go back to that central mystery, the banned episode. Was this beloved show really blacklisted around the world? Did this all happen overnight? The down-to-earth answer is no. The idea that it was banned from all countries is a myth, the kind of story that gets bigger over time. But the controversy itself is 100% real. The removal from Hulu in 2020 absolutely happened, and it forced everyone to ask a very uncomfortable question. Are we missing a key detail? It's a valid question because the thing is, we're looking at a show from 1988 through a 2025 lens, and that gap is proving to be a minefield. We're talking, of course, about The Golden Girls, a show that for the most part feels shockingly modern. It tackled issues of aging, sexuality, and social justice with a sharpness that still cuts today, which is precisely why the debate over one particular scene in the episode Mixed Blessings gets so heated. The episode was famously, if temporarily, pulled from a major streaming service over a 3-second gag. So, was the ban, even if temporary, justified? On one hand, you have the defenders. They argue that the scene is not, and was never intended to be, blackface. Blackface is the specific, hateful act of using makeup as a tool of racist mockery, born from the grotesque history of minstrel shows. Rose and Blanche, the argument goes, were using a beauty product. It was a mud mask. The scene was a classic sitcom B-plot. The girls try a new beauty regimen that disastrously collides with the A-plot. The joke, they say, isn't on the black characters who arrive at the door. The joke is on Rose and Blanche for the horrible, awkward, universe-imploding timing of their mud masks. When the black family arrives and Rose says, "This is mud on our faces, we're not really," the laugh is meant to be at her frantic, bumbling attempt to explain the unexplainable. Defenders argue the episode's real message, the one that truly mattered in 1988, is in Dorothy's immediate, fierce, and total acceptance of her son's interracial marriage, which she defends powerfully. To erase the episode, they claim, is to erase that progressive statement over a gag that was, at its core, innocent. But on the other hand, the argument for censoring it is powerful, and it's built on a very modern and very valid principle. Intent doesn't always matter as much as impact. The writers in 1988 may not have intended to cause harm. The actors may not have intended to reference a racist trope. But the visual of two white women, their faces painted dark, standing in front of a black family and looking shocked, is, to put it mildly, shocking. It plays on a deeply painful history, and for many viewers today, it's just not funny. It yanks you right out of the show and makes you deeply uncomfortable. For the platform that pulled it, the calculation was different. They aren't television historians or cultural archivists. They are a multi-billion-dollar subscription service managing brand risk. In the age of social media, context is the first casualty. A screenshot of that scene, stripped of all narrative, is a PR disaster. The risk of being associated with that image was too high. They decided it was better to erase the moment than to try and explain the context to 1 million angry subscribers. It was a business decision, plain and simple. So, was Hulu right to pull the episode, or is this cancel culture going too far? Let us know your thoughts. Like and subscribe for more hidden details.